So the best theologies are those that are kept synchronized, both left and right, both logic and feeling. So Charles Wesley had them singing all of the greatest of the Anglo-Catholic Wesleyan doctrines, and in his 6,000 hymns, there they are, and that is one form of the theology. It's all right there. So I think that's important that we keep both of them alive. So I urge people, for example, really, if they can't sing, they need to listen to music. And storytelling the same way. I just think any idea worth holding in a syllogism or a logical system, you've got to test it to see whether or not it exists also in parable and story.
Should we attempt to cultivate both those faculties, both of those abilities?
I subscribe to a theory which I read recently in the marvelous book entitled Teaching as a Conserving Activity by Neil Postman from New York University. And the point he makes is that whatever is deficient in the social order is what the schools ought to be filling in. So if we can sense that we are tending toward the affective, I think the charismatic movement, for example, is highly affective. It's very important if they're going to be whole that they be attentive to doctrine. So those of us who are in traditions which are highly cognitive, in which we believe that doctrine is the first, last, and only word, we better be checking our hymnody to be sure that our celebration and our right hemisphere experience is coming up. That's the sign, I think, of health and wholeness, whether it's individually or collectively in a group.
How incredibly creative of God to put dominance in one of those dimensions in one sex and dominance in the other in the opposite sex, so that there's a balancing between the two and where wholeness is found when they become one flesh. Isn't that exciting?
It's marvelous. It's marvelous.
In fact, weren't you the person that said that's the beauty of marriage, that God, who has all in one, took part of who he is and put that in the man, and took the other part of who he is and put that in the woman, so that you only see God properly reflected when those two, man and woman, are put together?
You're exactly right. And if we want to understand the image of God, we will have to go back to Genesis 1, where it's clearly stated that whatever else the image of God entails, it has something to do with our being created male and female. That is made powerfully clear in the New International Version, chapter 5 of Genesis, when all of that is recapitulated after the fall, and it's stated that in the beginning, when God created them, he created them male and female and called them, are you ready for this?
Adam.
Adam. Adam is neither male nor female, or else it is both. And the creation is the differentiating out of the human that which is female and that which is male. And that's a different answer to the whole sex crisis that we have in terms of sexism in America today than we're hearing articulated.
The complexity of the human personality is such that the beauty is in those differences, that we're not all the same. Wouldn't it be a boring relationship if men and women were identical, as it's being said? And why is it that those differences have to represent superiority and inferiority? Why does one have to be better than the other? You can hardly start talking about these differences without implying that there's an in-group and an out-group, and guess who's out? You know, I'm sure we'll get some mail in response to this discussion, seeing it as a put-down of women. And yet we are unique. Each sex is unique. He did not create one sex, but two.
I'm greatly encouraged by the words of St. Paul in Ephesians, in which the thesis is put forward that we need to be submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then the blueprint follows, in which the woman shows her support of the male by holding him up, and his identity is rooted in her strength. And that's the picture of the woman who exalts the male and holds him up and makes him strong, invests her strength in him. The male, on the other hand, you know, geared up by testosterone, is fearless, and it's his responsibility to lay down his life to protect her purity, so he may present her having neither spot nor blemish, because she is a prize to him. So here's the male aggressiveness in which he's wired for activity and for defense and protection. She is wired for support and exaltation. And I don't know any man who'd be willing to give up his name and take his wife's family name. A male is too fragile to do that. But every woman is somehow able, with her considerable strength, to exalt the name of her husband. And that's a much more profound kind of thing to me than saying somebody is lord over somebody else.
Don, now we touch on something here that I've found in marriage counseling to be of great significance. The right woman can absolutely make or break a man. I have seen numerous instances, and I'm sure you have too, where a man with talent and abilities and really the potential to go out and conquer the world has become ineffective and sniveling and retreating because his wife did not give him the confidence to confront the world and to assert himself. I see what a woman does for a man in that area as being absolutely vital, and maybe the reason I feel that so strongly is because I see very clearly what Shirley has done for me. She really believed in me when we got married, not because I had accomplished a lot, not because I was a superstar. I don't know, it was God-given, I guess, but she believed that I was going to really do something with my life, and she was thrilled to be part of my team and made me feel that and gave me incredible confidence at the University of Southern California as a student and later in administrative pursuits and then, of course, in what we're doing now. And I can see how the right woman is absolutely vital to that fragile male ego. It really needs a lot of support and a lot of confidence in order to compete and in order to assert himself.
Any young man, I suspect, knows that he's going to have to go to the fountain in order to draw that strength from a fine and good woman. I guess we ought to bring Robbie in from the outer studio and let me tell the story of what she has meant to me. I was married at 19. She, at 18, truly believed in me. I think every male who marries, as Levinson found, between 17 and 23, marries for intimacy, but he also marries to find someone to nourish his life vision. And a woman who can do that is going to make a man out of the boy that she marries. I advised a young man here in Los Angeles last night, and I said to him, you know, Jeff, you are not ever going to have your vocation clear until you find yourself in the arms of a woman who truly loves you and who can invest your whole life with meaning. Males have difficulty getting a life vision in place until it's nourished by a substantial and good
All right,
woman.
now, Don, this is another critical point related to this. I find that many men pour themselves into that life vision, as you call it, and it takes long hours and it takes a lot of energy, and when he comes home, he is shocked to find out that his wife not only doesn't share that vision, but she resents it, and he says, "Babe, I'm doing it for you," and she says, "Not for me, friend." That's a competitor to her.
And that marriage is in trouble.
That's right, because she tends to feel that he's married to that vision instead of being married to her. Whereas if she could share the vision with him and they could grow together, there wouldn't be a competition for his love. It would all be one package. I don't know if I said that very clearly, but there is something there.
It's very clear, and Levinson's Seasons of a Man's Life follows that on through to age 27. And if she is now the competitor to his work, he will have an affair in the workplace, and the marriage will be over within 10 years, because that life vision has got to be a consolidating feature of their marriage, and there's got to be a unified view of that. What Levinson found, I think, is very instructive to us in the Christian community, because it simply means that we've got to attend in that 10 years of the 20s. We've got to attend to keeping the synchrony between husband and wife in terms of a common vision. What happens also at 27 to 30 is the woman very often has questions of her own worth by that time, and her vocation comes into focus by around the age 30 transition for a woman. And it's important for a man to have some sense of how I can enable her to have a sense of worthwhileness, perhaps beyond the home and beyond having the privileges of motherhood and mothering. What is her vision of herself? So to key into that becomes a critical thing to satisfy a woman in this age of enormous household gadgetry, so that she has a good deal of freedom for her to get on with her education or get on with some volunteer vocation, something she needs for identity outside the home.
Okay, now to be fair with what we're saying, we've been talking about what a woman contributes to a man and how vital that contribution is to his confidence, to his assertiveness, to his willingness to compete, to his identity. But you just turned it around and said that what he does for her, especially about age 30, becomes also critical.
Wendy Ann Stewart, in her book Unfinished Business, points out that the identity crisis comes 10 years apart for a man and a woman, and that intimacy and identity are inverted in the Erickson scheme for males and females.
Back up and explain that
Okay,
now.
so that a woman's identity, what she really needs first of all, is intimacy. She needs to be loved, she needs to be wife and mother, and that tends to be her agenda at around age 20. That fits nicely with the male agenda of life vision and intimacy. Intimacy is a means of propelling him on into his career, his specialization, maybe his graduate school. So the two of them fit together nicely, but the surprise, the blooper that's messing up many marriages is very often this woman awakes to her need for identity beyond intimacy at about age 30. And this is a total surprise to a lot of men who figured, she's having babies and she's doing all the things I wanted her to do. Now suddenly she's got a life of her own that she's thinking about. And so the collapse of the marriages might have been avoided if they could have shared a vision. And every couple, I think, today has enough imagination to imagine what life could be like if both of us had our vision of ourselves as fulfilled persons contributing in the kingdom of God or in volunteer service or in a vocation.
You're not suggesting that at 30 every woman ought to start looking for a career.
It's a good time, though, because evidently it's an agenda that she's going to feel. And Wendy Ann Stewart thinks it's because she has a sense that my childbearing years are coming to an end. And of what use am I by the time my children are out of the nest and gone? This wasn't hitting women until 50, about 30 years ago. That's now been rolled back to about age 30, that these women are now contemplating that if I'm ever going to be the person that I want to be, I better get some more schooling, I better get some experience, I better start looking at all of that.